Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. The coroner's inquest into the 2021 death of Sylvia Pak concluded yesterday. She died in police custody in Inukshuk after being arrested under the Liquor Act. The jury ruled it was an accidental death caused by alcohol poisoning. The CBC's Des Loreen was at the inquest this week. He joins me now with more. Tell us about the testimonies that were heard this week, Des, what people were saying about the night that Sylvia died.
Thanks, Megan. We heard from her cousin Eva that Sylvia had recently returned from a trip to her fish camp. She was making dry fish, usually takes a couple of days. She didn't tell anybody that she was back in town. So when she showed up at her cousin Eva's place on the afternoon of July 31st, it was kind of a nice surprise for everybody. They had a couple of drinks together, but then Sylvia left to go find her common law partner. And so she left her cousin and friends there at the house.
And at what point were the RCMP called?
That was about 10 p.m. that night. Her cousin Eva was told that Sylvia was asleep at the bottom of her steps outside. Eva testified that her and her roommate tried to wake up her cousin, but Sylvia refused to get up. She said she was good, didn't want to leave the steps and come inside. So that's when Eva said she made the decision to call the RCMP so they could bring her to cells where she'd be safe and warm for the night.
And what condition was Sylvia in when they got to the RCMP detachment?
So video at the inquest showed that Sylvia was actually dragged out of the truck because she couldn't walk on her own. So one of the officers got a sleeping mat and they rolled her onto it. And then they dragged her up the ramp into the detachment hall where they removed her shoes and drawstring from her pants before dragging her on the mat into the cell. It was almost an hour later where the civilian guard noticed that she wasn't breathing and he called the regular members in. The officers tried to perform CPR on her before bringing her to the nursing station where she was declared dead.
Okay. I understand there was an expert witness on addictions during this inquest. What were the key points made by this expert on her health condition and the medical treatment that she should have received?
Yeah, so during the inquest, Dr. Evan Wood, an expert on addictions, was sworn in and he testified virtually from Vancouver. So he read the autopsy on Pak and he said that it showed no evidence of any long-term alcohol abuse. However, that after watching the videos and reading the reports, he said that Pak did display severe health issues at the time of her arrest, including irregular breathing, which indicated that she would need immediate medical attention. Wood explained to individuals that individuals in her condition are typically treated with IV fluids and sometimes even dialysis to help remove alcohol from their system. He noted, though, however, that such medical treatments might not be available in rural or remote communities like the one Pak was detained in.
And what about her family? Were they at the inquest and did they say anything about what happened, Des?
Yeah, I spoke to her son, Garrett. Garrett said that initially he didn't want to speak to the media, but he did want her story told and he wanted people to know what had happened to his mom. Her cousin Eva was there as well as her sister Denise. They all testified and they were in the room for parts of the hearing.
And what about the jury? What did the jury recommend at the end of this inquest?
So on the last day of the inquest, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with 11 recommendations in all. The members and the guards in Tuk will take policy training, and every 6 months they'll get refreshed on that. In 1 year, there's going to be specialized emergency training as well as audits on their emergency handling prepared system. And the jury also recommended that every health center in the NWT get a breathalyzer test on hand. And they also wanted to recommend that the territorial and local authorities in Tuk work to get an ambulance and a sobering center in the community.
Thank you for all your work on this, Des.
Thanks so much.
The Whitehorse municipal election is now less than 2 weeks away. Last night, the city's Chamber of Commerce hosted a candidate forum. The CBC's Cheryl Kawaja takes a look at the mayoral race and reaction from last night.
There are 5 men running for the city's top job. Only 4 were at the debate. And all but one of the candidates vying for the job are brand new to politics, like Dino Radinsky.
I would make sure that things are planned and followed through with, done the necessary investigations to make sure that things work. And thank you very much for your time.
Hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, the candidates take questions on issues like business, tourism, and building permits.
It's been interesting to get to know who the candidates are, for sure. We actually came here because I didn't have a clue, and I wasn't too sure at all who I was going to vote for. And my husband had the invite, so we thought we'd come and check it out. It's been interesting.
Kirk Cameron's previous experience as a councillor is evident in the details.
Possibly over $500 million in infrastructure drivers that come from two things. One is climate change and one is population increase. We have to get on top of that, and we have to stay focused on that through the entire time that the next council is in place.
Stephen Kwok may be running for the first time, but he's been part of this community for decades.
Maybe I don't have his experience in politics and connection, but I have my heart to the Whitehorse and all the community, that I'm a good listener, and as I say, I want to make Whitehorse great again.
Themes of safety and housing are also high in the agenda. Dan Bushnell's private business has been broken into numerous times. For him, cracking down on criminal activity and helping those struggling is a priority.
We need people that will speak for the people that don't have jobs, that don't come out to these kind of events, that are putting their noses to the grindstone every day. And they deserve to have a voice. And that's something that I've always done. It's something I've always advocated for.
Not everyone in the room is ready to cast a ballot just yet, but the session is informative.
Some similarities, but obviously some are a little more polished than others, at least from a speaking standpoint and experience standpoint. So it'll be really interesting to see what the new mayor looks like, as well as the council. Jack Bogard couldn't make it, but will be on the ballot. Whitehorse voters will make a final decision on who gets to be mayor October 17th. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
This week was the start of the fall sitting at the Yukon Legislative Assembly. The Yukon Party and the Yukon NDP got their first public opportunity since last spring to question the government. The CBC's Callie McTavish breaks it all down for us.
The first week of the fall sitting was filled with debate across topics, from the supplementary budget and Victoria Gold to contaminated lead water in schools and waste management. On the budget, the Yukon Party criticized the government's financial management. It accuses the Liberals of neglecting healthcare spending while hiring nearly 200 full-time employees. The Yukon Party also accused the government of jumping the gun on Victoria Gold's receivership at the cost of taxpayers. The government contended it had to intervene due to Victoria Gold's slow response on environmental mitigation, and that the company was nearly bankrupt by the time of the receivership hearing anyways. NDP leader Kate White also brought up lead in school drinking water. The government did not test water in schools over the summer as they had promised. The education minister claimed that each school has at least one clean drinking water source, but didn't give a timeline for future remediation work. Both parties criticized the government's closure of 4 rural transfer stations. They said the government acted in bad faith when consulting the public, then ignoring their feedback. The government responded that a larger waste management plan is at play here, and the closures will ultimately save the municipalities money. And finally, Connective, the operator of the emergency shelter in downtown Whitehorse, was under the microscope again. That's due to another overdose death there this week. NDP MLA Annie Blake called for an update on the government's review of Connective. She has previously questioned the operator's fitness to continue running social programs in the territory. MLAs will return to the Legislative Assembly on Monday. Callie McTavish, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The Inuvialuit Regional Corporation is part of negotiations on the Baffin Sea Boundary. In late September, the Canadian and American governments announced the creation of a task force to negotiate the maritime border. Any changes to that boundary would also affect the Inuvialuit settlement region. It extends into the Beaufort Sea along the border with the United States.
The Inuvialuit settlement region does follow the line directly as far, if I recall correctly, the 76 latitude, but it goes straight from onshore to offshore, and where it goes on to the offshore is part of the area that's in question and part of the negotiations.
Canada and the U.S. have a long-standing dispute over a section of the Beaufort Sea. They say the Arctic region is a growing focus for both nations, and they want to solve this issue. The countries say negotiations will begin this fall. At Fort Good Hope's northern store, a case of Pepsi will cost you nearly $30. A can of beans, $7. And a 1-liter bottle of water, that will be $8. These prices are 3 times what it costs for the same products in Yellowknife.
Right now, that's one of the biggest issues we're having because climate change, low water, no barges are able to come up or go down the Mackenzie River. So everybody up here screaming for the highway.
At the Sawtooth Secretariat annual general meeting in Fort Good Hope last week, leaders discussed the need for the highway, but even the most optimistic estimates make it unlikely to be built before the late 2030s. Another short-term solution was pitched at the Assembly. Leaders agreed to advocate for a winter road to connect Fort Good Hope and the rest of the Sawtooth to Inuvik. That would allow residents to drive a shorter distance to pick up supplies normally provided by barge. An organization focused on preserving Inuit history for 40 years is being forced to shut down its historical archives next week due to lack of funding. The CBC's Mahnor Mubarak has more.
The archives have chronicled the history and major events for Inuit, everything from the signing of the land claims to the creation of national Inuit organizations. The Inuit Broadcasting Corporation digitizes old videotapes to preserve the information online. Their main source of funding for the program came from the federal government through the Indigenous Languages and Cultures program, but IBC says the funding was transferred in 2023 to Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated. The federal government says IBC should apply to that organization for funding instead. IBC sent in 2 applications to NTI, but say they haven't gotten a clear response. A year and a half without major funding for the project, IBC says their archival project has to come to a stop. Manitok Thompson is the executive director for IBC.
We can't keep going on. It's been very frustrating because we don't know what's happening with the funds. We just don't know what's happening.
The amount of funding IBC used to get from the fund varied from year to year. Over the past 5 fiscal years, IBC received more than $1 million in funding for the project. David Ekarialuk is an elder and cultural instructor at Pikusilirivik, an Inuit cultural learning facility based in Clyde River. He stressed the importance of the archives.
We, as Nunavummiut, are we really going to let go of the knowledge we should have kept and forget about the work that was done then? There was a time when we completely disassociated ourselves from our past life. If it weren't for those archives, I would not have been able to relearn the knowledge and deliver it to the students I teach today.
Lisa Khiluki Kopikwaluk is the president for the Inuit Circumpolar Council, an organization that represents Inuit. They recently launched their own Inuit archive. She says it's a shame to see another archive having to shut down.
It's really important to know our history, our stories, and the way they have been told in the past and the way they are being told today. So it also informs our future and how we will continue telling our stories.
NTI has declined to comment at this time. IBC hopes they can secure funding so they can continue archiving Inuit history. Mahnor Mubarak, CBC News, Iqaluit.
He was completely unaccountable.
Prince Andrew never had somebody say the word no.
The Queen adored him more than anybody else.
This whole story is about the abuse of power.
We've got emails, we've got photographs, we've got witnesses.
Wow. Ordinary people turn a small investment into big bucks.
I'm in it to win it.
Do you think Mummy and Daddy are going to double their money? That's what I thought.
Why, hello.
You want it? I got it.
This is so cool.
Focus, focus, focus.
Here we go.
Oh, imagine how good the TV is gonna look now.
Good God!
This is incredible.
Did you know this?
As if.
Could the pressure be any higher?
every week the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
Win, win, win.
We are not going back.
Sundays, join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
It's got to come from the heart.
I will cry. You're so together.
How much more connected do you want to be?
See you there.
Guess what? Pinch me. Yes!
A wolf killed by wildlife officers at Rainy Hill last month in the Northwest Territories was likely the same one that bit a woman walking her dog in the area. The NWT Department of Environment and Climate Change says it reached that conclusion based on evidence from its investigation. It says the lab results were inconclusive, but other evidence gathered strongly suggests it was the same wolf. The adult female was in poor physical condition and tested negative for rabies. The GNWT closed the trail because of the incident in early September. 3 days later, wildlife officers killed a wolf and sent it for testing. No other wolves have been spotted in that area, and the trail has reopened. Baker Lake Nunavut is recovering from strong winds that led to a major power outage. Resident and business owner Peter Tapatai says most of the community has power now. He wants leaders, though, to plan for next time and consider advanced emergency preparedness, specifically for elders.
It was a very stressful time, especially thinking of our elders. They have units that are duplexes and joined together. But once the power is out, they have no other source of power and they need something to provide power and heat to their units. Our leaders will need to consider this as well.
Tapatai says he's thankful the emergency happened now and not during the coldest time of year. 7gen Energy is calling on Nunavut youth to help lead the territory into a sustainable future. The Indigenous Youth Council held a Clean Energy Summit in Iqaluit this week. It's the first time the event has been hosted in the north. Samuel Watt brings us there.
I don't know if you got my catchphrase, though, but clean energy starts with good energy.
That good energy appeared to be catching on with the 100-odd youth at yesterday's panel discussion. It's a long way from home for Mishkakwin James Harper, who's off the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation in Alberta. But he says he felt a duty to be there for the planet and his northern relatives.
In a Cree household, we have a term, Wakotuwin, which means everything is interconnected, we are all related.
Nunavut organisations promoted the innovations they're making in hydro, wind and solar, though Laura Jeannie Gibbons didn't shy away from the realities of the Arctic.
The Nunavut Mood Challenge faces some challenges up north above the Arctic Circle with extreme colds and some delays with the equipment.
The other issue with these big plans for clean energy are the big gaps in the workforce. One of the reasons Government of Nunavut representatives spoke at the conference.
The sector is emerging here. There are projects that are on the go now, but it's still, it's young and the opportunities are still to present themselves.
And when that time comes, he's hoping the next generation will be ready. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
A Sisters in Spirit walk and vigil was held in Whitehorse today. The walk honors the victims and families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in the Yukon and northern British Columbia. The CBC's Travis Burke spoke to organizers and participants during the walk today.
We're going to do the Sisters in the Spirit visual walk down to the monument at the park and then head over to KDCC to share a meal in honor of our stolen sisters, and then come together as a group to honor their memories and come together just to keep it in the forefront of everybody's minds. Well, it's an annual national event, so you'll see these vigils kind of across Canada, but it's a way to make sure that the women and men and boys and girls that we've lost remain in people's memories, and to bring awareness to the issue that continues to plague the Yukon territory and all over Canada for Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse people.
It's an important walk. It's great to raise awareness for it. These women, never had a choice in life. They were taken and never were able to make that choice to return home. Still there's many women being looked for, still many being taken. I have a cousin that went missing, Laura Frank, way back in the day, and never returned home. So.
For me, I feel like, I do believe that this walk is important because it helps to keep the awareness at the forefront of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, not only here in the Yukon, but across the country, here in Canada and all across North America. I believe it sheds light on the ongoing racism and injustices that Indigenous women and girls face all across Canada and here in the Yukon.
I just feel like not many people are aware of the issues, and I want to research more of what's being done about it and what's done to prevent it and how it's being taught out into the world and if it's accurately being taught.
A powerful symbol of Inuit survival and resilience is taking shape in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. A renowned cultural teacher is at Acadia University, building an Inukshuk on campus to foster understanding and reconciliation. Gareth Hampshire reports.
Peter Ichnik has been building Inukshuks for more than 50 years. A residential school survivor, he went on to become a leading political figure and is known for his passion for Inuit history, culture, and identity.
Inukshuk is a symbol of survival for Inuit since time immemorial.
Students at Acadia are helping him with this project, but he's proud that at the age of 77, he's still in good shape and excited about sharing the traditions he learned growing up in the Arctic, where he was born in an igloo and lived in one until he was 11, when he was forced into residential school. He describes that as a kidnapping and was abused during his time there, but has dedicated his life to promoting healing.
We are establishing what I call Inukshuk, living in peace and harmony. That means healing and reconciliation for all Canadians.
He's been invited back to Acadia by Professor Cynthia Alexander, who's known him for about 25 years, and asked him to be part of a 5-day reconciliation gathering. He also spoke and sang to her class.
We at Acadia University, our whole campus community and our local community, have had the privilege of listening to, learning from, and engaging with him. This reminds us of our connection with another coastal peoples, the Inuit, and how much we ourselves can learn from Inuit.
Another expert in the class is Lara Hartman, who gave a keynote speech to the gathering about decolonizing education. From a First Nation in British Columbia, she graduated from Acadia and likes the idea of the Inukshuk being placed outside the library.
I think that it shows a lot of connection, not just with, Mi'kmaq culture and First Nations cultures, but also that the university has done this and taken the step towards including other Indigenous cultures here.
Inukshuk means likeness of a person, he says. While each one is unique, they all reflect traditional knowledge with multiple purposes, including acting as navigation tools, showing fishing spots and hunting grounds, and here at the university as an educational tool.
We've always been here, we are always here, and we're always going to be here. So people of Nova Scotia, people of Canada, will have a better idea of who we are as Inuit.
Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Wolfville.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. We leave you tonight with some scenic footage of autumn in Whitehorse. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
Dear Mother, I am no stranger to suffering, but nothing could have prepared me for this. The boys come to us mangled and blinded, and so often there is little we can do. If this war doesn't end soon, there won't be a man living on the face of the earth. Air raid. But don't worry. We nurses continue. I continue. I'm glad I came, but I think very often how good it will be when it's all over and I'm returning to all I love most, home.
Eleanor Thompson was awarded the Military Medal for her bravery that night. Eden Pringle was killed in action. They were two of the nearly 3,000 Canadian nursing sisters during the First World War.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
With local CBC Radio 1 Live to connect us closer to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want, on the CBC News app. Download for free.
Hi, friends. Guess what? Pinch me. Ooh. Mind blown. Yes!
I'm not a delicate lady.
I don't know who needs to hear this.
I had a man do an impression of me recently, and he lowered his voice, so...
What's going on upstairs for them?
I'm sorry.
Nailed it.
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
We are not going back.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.